Hi, Mako.
Hey, Julia, good to see you.
Good to see you too. How's it
Yeah.
going?
Good. Yeah, as you can see, I've been busy. I have some new pieces here that I'm working on. So, whenever you get back in the studio and uh, you've been thinking about these pieces, before the canvas is prepared, but um, it's exciting time. How
Uh,
about you?
when we last spoke, you were preparing to travel and you were going to be getting the materials for these
Right.
paintings.
That's right. That's right. We did go to Japan and visited some um you know they're no longer like shops to me. They're like um family because I'm part of an ecosystem of Nihonga, which means that I get to long journey, be on a long journey with these people who are dedicated for generations to prepare minerals and brushes and silk and paper, um, and people who, we talk about culture care, but this is the origin of culture care, how it takes a long time before you understand yourself well enough, but then you work with these people who help you. And this time we went to the pigment shop, who the lady there has known me for over close to 40 years now, but she um, was sharing with me some things that I was really um, fascinated by, because my professor, my mentor, Amadazo Kayama, would go to the shop and sit down where I was sitting down and tell her about this technique called momigami, which is to crumple up paper and create these patterns on paper. But he had this particular way of doing it, which was very unusual. And so she was passing it, that down to me, and we were able to talk about him. And yeah, so this is what I get to be part of. And of course, this is any kind of indigenous craft is disappearing. So paper makers are passing, and brush makers too. So I often get uh, the brushes this time from this brush maker that he said, well, this is the last batch. So it we have to do what we can to preserve these incredible generational gifts to us.
Yeah. Yeah. And now you get to create a record of those gifts with your paintings.
Right. And that's really very exciting, for me to be able to remember these links and connections. So what I do here will activate the tradition, the ecosystem, and unless I do my part, right, that
Mm.
the part that they are dedicated to serving, we can't really see the whole ecosystem either. And I've been more intentional in my exhibits. I had a small exhibit in Tokyo, um, at the Silk Makers Gallery. Actually, he saw these paintings of tulips that um, he was mounting them for me, and we decided to do a small exhibit to really honor the paper makers and people who are preparing silk and mounting these. And so, it was a way for me to make alive what is hidden, and try to do what I can, little I can, to help preserve these amazing amazing legacy.
Mhm. Yeah. As an artist, I wonder what you are looking for when you are looking for a new pigment to work with. Like when
Y-
you go to the pigment shop,
Yeah.
what do you,
So this is interesting that you ask because I went in, I went to ask her, are these types of azurite available? Because I had a whole batch about 2 years ago. And her answer was so precious. She said, "Oh, not for another 3 years." So, I went went home empty-handed because, she knew what I needed.
uh-huh.
And she knew what the pigments needed too, I think. And it's just time to wait. This is not time for transaction, this is not business. It's just I just need to wait another 3 years, maybe two, she said. So it's as if, she knows better.
Yeah. She's like, uh, whatever timeline you think you're on.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
It's not time yet. And like that's the end of the conversation. you know. And then she started talking about my professor, and we had a lovely visit, but I didn't buy anything. I just came away without. And that's a really beautiful story of how these relationships work. It's not what you think, It's and I always I now find it very funny that you can go on Amazon and buy paint, and of course we all do that, but it's just these are packaged, manufactured, marketed, right? So they have done market research on us and know exactly what the price point is and what quality and blah blah blah. And this is not like that. It's a very different mindset. And I suppose that's what I bring back to the studio, right? This relationship, what she said, oh, we're waiting for this particular type of pigments. And that's great because then I can think about in the meantime, what I can do to prepare for that when the time is ripe. And it's just such a lovely way to come back to the studio. I just have to wait for those pigments that I think I need.
Yeah. Wow. And is it because it comes from a certain place
Right.
that and then it has to be processed in a certain way?
Yeah, apparently there's a cycle of how they find these azurite, and it's found in very remote areas and what happens is they dynamite through to get to the copper,
Mhm.
and so it charts the azurite on the surface, and and so and those get usually thrown away.
Mm.
So I guess what's happening is certain people have to look for those, and knowing that, the shopkeeper have requested them because of me.
Mm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that obviously will take time, right?
Yes.
So, they're not sure, or she knows that the cycle is like every 2, 3 years, so she's hoping to have them. But, even if that never happens, that's part of the story. That is
Mhm.
okay.
Mhm.
And so it's not necessarily about, yeah, me wanting certain things and then supplier's job is to supply them. It's kind
Mhm.
of the other way. I am supposed to wait, to see if certain types of minerals will be available at certain ways, and there's something very beautiful about that. So
That's amazing. And so when you are in your studio and you're working,
yeah.
how aware of you how aware are you of the community
Mm.
that has made all of these objects that you're working with?
Yeah,
How do they participate in the process with you?
yeah, they're always I'm in conversation with them all the time. It seems I was just mounting this particular type of silk, and it was very hard to work with. It has been reinforced by paper, which silk maker did in Japan for me while I was there, and then I brought it back excited to work on this. But the problem is silk and paper when it's wet reacts differently.
Hmm.
So as you know, paper expands, but silk will no, paper will expand, yes, and silk will contract when it's
Hmm.
wet.
Hmm.
So it buckles basically in ways that makes it very difficult to paint on. And so I had to figure out a solution to this, which is typically by mounting them in a panel on a panel. But then, of course, I wasn't sure if particular type of wheat glue would work. So I'm like thinking back on my training, but also I have to improvise here because the climate here is very different.
Hmm.
So it's drier and so it may not do the stretching in the same way, the speed. So it's kind of this complicated, you know, um, it's like doing math, but like
Yes.
there's multiple things happening at the same time. So I had to. I was thinking of actually emailing my silk maker, but then I actually remember him talking about mounting some of these pieces, and so it was kind of a internal conversation. And well, I figured I'll try it. It's reversible, so you can always redo it. And it worked. So I was like, yay.
Bravo.
Yeah, but you're always remembering, recollecting, when you go to these places, it's not as if it's not like YouTube where you go through process of this is how you do things and these are the steps and the recipe,
Mhm.
right?
Mm.
Um, it's like everything is happening and you have to pay attention to what's happening because they're not intentionally showing you these things, but in the process of you interacting with them, and maybe even having meal together, you pick up things, right, that are intangibles that I wouldn't even know how to write it down or articulate until something like this happens.
Mhm.
And then you're kind of tracing back and thinking back and oh, I remember him talking about silk this way and okay, maybe this will work.
Mhm.
So it's a very intuitive process and but that talk about future of education, right? Being now with AI and all that, that's in conversation. But these are the things that machines cannot do because they are, you know, you have to be fully present in all of your senses, as it were, to remember what happened even 10 years ago, right?
Mhm.
So I'm still learning from my mentor, master painter, because he'll leave these seeds, right? He gave it to the shop owner, and shop owner gave it to me. And I'm like thinking about that here as I'm working.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm not aware of that. It, these are all these questions that, you're swimming in. And maybe that's what culture care ultimately is. Like when we become a community of like-minded people, I suppose, or even if you disagree with each other, that we agree to be present, fully present in our making. And then we somehow get to a point where every interaction feeds into our creative imagination. And not only we are richer for it, but what we create is in response to what this person has said or we have talked about or um, and then this journey continues as way of revealing itself,
Mm,
into the world.
yeah. Yeah. And that continuing conversation is that generational work of culture care.
Yeah, it is. It is generational. You're absolutely right, and we are, hopefully able to influence the next generation in a way, uh, like depositing them in certain ways, and that's why I write. Yeah, I write to first clarify my own thinking, but um, who I'm writing to is really the future generation that may be hopefully helped by what I have learned and what we have cultivated, and that they become this ecological language of making, that will always be, essentially what is human to us.
Mm,
And that no matter how much technology develops, is going to be the key part of what we create, that is, or what we respond to as beautiful.
mm, yeah. And that's so much of the book that you and Heijen just put out,
Yes,
Beauty and
thank you.
Justice.
Yes, thank you. Yes, beauty and justice. And we landed in Japan, and that was when it was released. So it kind of became a book tour, you know. And fortunately, we had few people, churches, and galleries that were interested. So we were able to talk about the book, even though it wasn't immediately available in Asia ahead of time, and Taiwan as well as Hong Kong. So
Yeah. And so much of what you've been talking about in our conversation just now, also in the book you wrote on page 86, art has the power to restore our humanity.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Art also has the power to dehumanize us through
Mhm.
counterfeit beauty.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, Mako. Like, because it is that powerful and it is
Yeah.
that important
Hmm.
and it is inherently tied to our humanity.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And Pope Leo just
Yes.
came up with, yeah, and cyclical. It was on AI, but it was about that. It was about humanity and how that counterfeit beauty leads to marginalization
Hmm.
and power struggles, right?
Hmm.
And how, what he calls subsidiaries, which by the way, I'm going to write kind of like a response papers, I guess, in a newsletter coming up, because it's so important. It's what he's saying is so much at the heart of culture care.
Yes.
So I will expand on this, but um, what these elements, this particularity of localized expressions,
Hmm.
and when counterfeit takes over, which we might call idols of Babel, right?
Hmm.
When the power is seen to be singular, then the rest of us will have to swim up to it, and many of us will not be able to. So the marginalized communities will be even more marginalized, and the scarcity mindset will take over. And so essentially what true beauty can do is to liberate from oppression, liberate us toward truth and
Mm,
goodness.
mhm,
And we've experienced that in the slums where we literally felt like we were being invited into a conversation that would be impossible to have at home. You know, that
mm,
because this is the slums, because it's in the margins, we are able to have these truly human conversations.
mm,
And I am certainly grateful for that, despite the fact that this is a very dangerous, bleak environment. But you know what Pope Leo is saying is that the reason why we need to go to these areas of marginalization and discarded realities and people without any power is because that's where the table flips. That's where cosmetic beauty is no longer powerful. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't have any power because it's been all stripped away. But a child smiling, that's have power, you
mm,
know. And so for us to go to witness that, to protect that, to empower that, um, is the work that any art, right, should be able to do.
mm,
And we don't have this conversation in our world because it's all about power. It's all about possession. It's all about, you know, our egos
mm,
and who can do something that's, you know, that out, you know, overthrows the past or whatever. Um, when I wonder if this beauty and justice conversation should be the primary means to um, for artists to operate in the world.
mm,
Obviously, we are able to reach the very top, you know, the powers, institutions, and so forth. But artists are also able to, they're free to roam in the margins, as
mhm,
Vincent van Gogh did, as George Rouault did. You know, this is nothing new. It just, we don't think of it in that paradigm anymore, because, you know, everything we hear about the art world is about elitism and, you know, who can, you know, create the most transgressive, you know, this game that we end up playing. And um, the slums, if you go into any area of marginalization, if you go into a prison, you find this world in which, you know, this cosmetic power is no longer, you know, I mean, it's still there, obviously, in the internal um, struggles, but it is literally entrapped by the circumstances. And therefore there's opportunities to be human
mhm,
because the limitations, you know, allow us to actually speak face to face
mm,
without technology, let's say. And there's something about that, you know, harnessing of technology toward amplifying our humanity rather than, you know, going toward this, like accelerating this power struggle
mm,
and power game. Um, Seems so wise to me. But it's essentially what artists have always longed for. You know, that those who have created enduring work
mm,
have somehow creative work beyond those power centers. Even if they were part of it, their works spoke beyond that. So that's something we need to wrestle with, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
As you're talking, I'm reminded of Agnes Martin, of course,
yes,
painting with her back towards the world.
yes.
You know?
She is such a presence. Talk about presence in the studio. I don't think I have a day without Agnes Martin speaking to me. I was just um, reading her talking about hospitality.
Mm.
She was saying, like, you have to, when you have an artist, you invite an artist to come to your studio, you have to prepare yourself, she said, to host them. Like, if your mind is not to host, or, you know, you're like thinking about yourself and your work, then you shouldn't host anybody because it's not kind to them. I was like, yes, this is culture care. You know, this is
Yeah. And there's so much contemporary discourse, again, about Will Guidara's book, Unreasonable Hospitality. Have you
yes,
read? And it's
yes,
excellent.
yeah,
And it's all about
same conversation.
practices of attention, which
Yeah,
is what Martin is talking about
yes,
here.
that's right. Yeah, and
Getting in frameworks.
yeah, it's a tea master, right?
Mhm,
Inviting Warlord to have tea. That intentionality, and how is your studio set up to do that?
mhm,
Right? We don't talk about that as artists. We're perhaps focused on self-expression, but isn't art part of that hospitality? You know, what we create to connect emotions.
mhm,
Um, if that is fundamentally our goal, is to create something that people feel
mhm,
something, then it is an act of hospitality. And there's a great deal of, thinking that we can do about that, and like how intentional can we be, and how much of our art itself is hospitable.
mhm. Yeah. How is it having the multidimensional conversation?
Yeah, yeah,
How is it facilitating that? How is it prompting that?
yeah. Well, I feel like what we're doing here, first of all, is something that is, I hope, something that invites people
Mm,
uh, toward not just what we're talking about, but really the reality of technology, again, assisting us to create this awareness of each other, aware, to dig deep, perhaps into um, what we think about, how we share, how we create, how we invite, right?
mhm,
And you're right, because I think today, there's like simultaneously multiple things are happening all at once, right?
mhm.
We have this conversation, but I'm sure somebody's writing a book about this, like there's seeds like being
Yeah.
scattered, and I'm sure there is an awareness not just among artists but scientists,
Mhm,
people who are seeking solutions in research, to lawyers like Ejan, who is advocating for justice.
mhm,
Um, these are all connected, right?
mhm,
In somewhat very direct ways today.
mhm, mhm,
Um, so Beauty and Justice, our book, may have been the first book to connect those two topics together. Elaine Scarry's book, Beauty and Being Just, is certainly one of the key markers, but we feel like these two flip side of the same coin, that they pointers toward a world that is full of shalom, then you have justice and you have beauty both at the same time. So the path toward justice is through beauty, path toward beauty is through justice, right? So these are all connected. Um, and I think we're experiencing multifaceted ways that when one person speaks about something, there's somewhat, it's like a butterfly effect where,
Mm,
where somebody else is having the same conversation or, conversations that touch upon the same things, but differently in their cultural context, across the world.
mm,
And so if we are aware of those things, then social media can become a powerful tool to connect with
mm,
people
mm,
and to really accelerate, way not toward building a Tower of Babel, but toward empowering, these local communities, which is
mm,
Culture Care has always had this vision that we're not an institution. We're giving away as much as we can resources. So these local little communities and friendships can have this conversation that we're
yes.
having. And so, it's a very different mindset. But doing this work with Hedgen on, social justice, mercy ministries, you end up thinking that there's such richness and abundance. Talk about courage and abundance
Mm,
in the most unexpected areas of the world.
mhm,
And these are the people who inspire us. And, they are doing this without sometimes any resources that we have.
mhm,
And yet they seem to be connected to humanity, to Earth, to understand that, even though our lives are short, there is much to be done today, to be kind, to help each other. Um, and so I think we are in a new season really for cultural care movement. Certainly, the last two popes have spoken in a way that makes way for us to operate as artists in the world, and in a different mindset
mm,
than what typical art schools will train us to do, um, and certainly the art world, and how to live faithfully in the exotic land, is um, is more of the challenge, but I think justice certainly is part of that. We cannot really be blind to what is happening, and artists need to be, as isolated as we are, right, in our studios. Um, we are intuiting what is happening,
mm,
the painful realities of our days, and can we lament and
mm,
be honest about the conditions of the world, and to identify and create new language that hopefully will not only give people hope for but the future generations, a way to mend the
mm.
fractures and um, give us something in the future that is not so driven by culture wars rhetoric, you know.
Yeah. In Also in Beauty and Justice, you wrote that creating beauty is always future oriented.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think that that ties in with what you've just said.
Yeah. Yeah. We're
It's,
right.
go ahead.
No, we're futurists, artists and futurists. Um, we have to be, facing a blank page or empty stage. We're creating the future.
Yeah.
Um, and we do it by referencing our past and bringing that to bear upon today's realities. But when we do anything, when we, you know, begin to paint, we are envisioning something that doesn't exist yet, right?
Mhm.
So that is certainly the future of that work, but we need to realize that that is fundamentally the human power agency
Mhm.
to every single person has actually to at any moment um, welcome the future into what is happening in front of us. Like, if you plant a tree, you're being a futurist.
Yes.
Like, if you didn't think that, the tree is going to grow, there's no reason to do it, right?
Yeah. And all of that is another facet of hospitality.
Yes. Amen. That's right. Yeah. And this is part of the language of culture care. I would like to develop even further. What does it mean to create a global awareness toward hospitality and kindness, you know, and how does beauty play a part in that, or even pushing up against what is unjust, right?
Mm.
How do we transgress against the corruption of powers and brokenness? Those and we have to do it by inviting people, not looking down at people and categorizing them in a certain way, or demonizing them, right? Which is culture war ways, rhetoric. Instead, we learn to use language even to invite those who do not agree with, where we may sit, but to be able to do that as a community is an important topic for us.
Yes, it's very good.
Yeah.
And you have the updated edition of Culture Care coming out this summer.
That's right. The summer, yeah, it's coming out. I think in July, with followed by David Brooks. I have additional chapters. Culture war rhetoric has taken on this really violent um, results, and unfortunately, that's what I thought will happen when I wrote it in after 9/11. Started to articulate this. And we have to think of a new way to be citizens.
Yes.
And so the publisher thought this is important work to amplify in response to what is happening with party, but also to um, create a language that is not about reacting to culture wars,
Hmm.
but this language of abundance and love, that we seem to think is so marginalized today. Um, but that's ultimately the human connection is about, this hospitality, language of hospitality, inviting people toward making together, right? Something that we want to respond to. So this work continues, and I'm glad for Ivy Press to do the second edition. So yeah,
So good.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Mako.
Thank you, Julia. It's such a delight to have this conversation monthly, and I hope people will let us know what they're doing and what they're thinking about.